Thank you very much. So we are going to start now from here. This is the outline of this chapter. First of all, good morning everyone again. With the sag and tension. Yesterday we just have an introduction discussing all those points that are related to design of electrical and mechanical systems in terms of transmission of electrical power. Now today we are going to go to the chapter, and these are the things like we'll have a brief introduction to this sag and tension, and then what are they, what is sag, what is tension, and then the parabolic method, loading on a conductor, which is mechanical loading, and then ground clearance that is required in each and every case where we string transmission line conductors between two supports, and then what are the factors that affect sag, and then we go for another method which is called catenary method, then supports that are at unequal levels, and what is economic span length. Then I put something for further study, and from that section of further study I don't ask any question in the test and exam as well, and then we will do some tutorial. Thank you. So we are going to go to this overhead transmission line and sag and tension. So this chapter actually is on the sag and tension, meaning the sag related to a conductor when it is strung in between two adjacent supports. Like we said that electrical power is in overhead transmission lines, or sometimes underground cables, or even underwater cable or undersea cables. But then for underground cable or underwater or undersea cables, the sag is not that relevant at all, because we don't string them in between two adjacent supports from a height above ground. But when we have overhead transmission lines that we normally see in the outskirts of the cities, sometimes it passes through the areas. These days we might find it busy, but at the time when they were built, those places were not that busy, so it was allowed at that time. But nowadays, when you are building or trying to plan a new one, it should not be through the city. It should be outside the city. So the sag and tension are related to overhead transmission lines that carry the power transmitted from the sending end to the receiving end. And then it is also related to the strength of the conductor, meaning the conductor must be mechanically strong enough to be supported in between the adjacent supports, meaning it should be capable of withstanding all the mechanical forces that will be on it due to atmospheric and weather conditions. So weather conditions are also going to be considered in this chapter, meaning if it is cold winter, ice is forming and getting deposited on the surface of the conductor. If it is too windy, the conductors are being blown away, causing the conductor to swing and then causing vibration in turn as well. Like when conductors swing, vibration gets induced in them, and because of that vibration, conductors can get snapped off from the point where they are fastened to the tower. And then we also come to the topographical conditions, meaning how the land is. Is it plain land? If the land is plain, then we'll have two supports of same height. But if the land is not plain, sometimes we have two supports are at unequal levels, also causing the supports to be of unequal height. So the topology of the plane is in the scenario as well. So these are the main things that we considered in this sag and tension. Now when we do so, we go to the other factors that are related here is the ultimate strength, and this ultimate strength is related to the conductor material. So when we choose the conductor material for making or construction of a conductor, then we use maybe copper, fully copper conductor or fully aluminum conductor. Sometimes we can choose the number of material depending on the application of that particular conductor in transmission and distribution system. So the material is involved here, and from that material, what is coming as a parameter or a factor is the ultimate strength, meaning how much of tension it can carry before it breaks. That ultimate strength is related to that we learned in applied mechanics or other modules. So ultimate strength is important here, and from ultimate strength, what is related is the factor of safety. So we don't want the conductor to reach its ultimate strength when we string a conductor in between two adjacent supports. That's why we keep some allowance, meaning little bit of flexibility, meaning we choose the factor of safety, meaning if the conductor is not going subjected to ultimate strength, the conductor will operate at a tension which is much lower than its ultimate tension. So when the conductor is going to be designed using a factor of safety, meaning if I need, just a simple analogy, if I need 10 liters of water every day for 4 people to drink, then I will go to the store and I will consider a factor of safety. So what I will do, I will buy 12 liters of water, or I might buy 50 liters of water, I might buy 20 liters of water. So that's the factor of safety. So when I'm saying that I need 10 liters of water, I might buy 12 liters, I might buy 15 liters, I might buy 20 liters. So in that case, factor of safety is coming as, if I buy 12 liters, the factor of safety will be 12 over 10, meaning 1.2. If I bought 15 liters, it will be 1.5, because it's 15 over 10. If I bought 20 liters, it will be 2.0, meaning I'm so safe, because I bought 50% more, or 100% more, or 20% more. But when we do so, what we do is spend more money than what is actually required. But we cannot go to a situation where it is marginally less, because it will be causing the consumption of water, or if we come back to a conductor tension, meaning when the conductor is subjected to tension, it will reach its ultimate strength or ultimate tension. We don't want to go there. We rather want the conductor tension to be much below than its ultimate strength, so that there is no chance or possibility of conductor getting snapped from the point where they are fastened to the support. So that's the factor of safety. But as we choose more the factor of safety, it's safe, but it involves more investment in terms of the conductor itself. And how do they affect? We'll discuss on those things in the following slide. Now it's coming the stringing procedure. Now when we string a conductor or length of a conductor, we string in between two supports. Like we said, the support can be a steel tower, and for transmission lines, we normally use steel towers, and sometimes they are called lattice towers, and they also have different names because of their different purposes. Not all the towers are pylons. Sometimes you know them as pylons that you see by the national highways, or sometimes these days, as I mentioned, to a busy place as well. Those pylons are made of steel structure. Small pieces are welded together to give that structure, and they are required in the stringing procedure in the first place. And after that, we put some insulator with the tower structure. Tower structure is made up of steel or metal. You can say in general metallic structure. We can't put a live conductor to the metallic structure directly because the conductor will be grounded. All the current will be going towards ground and back to the generator neutral point in generating station, and it's also dangerous. It's not useful. It does not make sense. So we need to put an insulator to insulate the live conductor from the tower structure. So what we do when we choose the insulator, we choose the insulator according to the voltage at which the transmission line is going to operate. So for example, it can be 220 kV, it can be 345 kV, 400 kilovolt, or 765 kilovolt transmission line. So we choose the insulators accordingly in the procedure of stringing a conductor in between the support. So there will be insulators for each of these three phases for transmission. And then look at the conductor strength. Now we said the conductor strength comes from the material itself. So copper has its own tensile strength, aluminum has its own tensile strength, iron, we choose iron, or steel, we can also choose steel or some other material that will be discussed in the following chapter, transmission line parameters. So whenever we choose any material, that conductor strength will be related because of their tensile strength. But we need to remember that the working tension, meaning the conductor is going to be subjected to a tension that is much less than its tensile, ultimate tensile strength, because we will always choose the factor of safety, which is going to be greater than unity, meaning it will always be subjected to a tension less than the ultimate tensile strength. And then we come to this sag and tension relation. Now, sag and tension relations, I need to show you a diagram. Before I go to the other bullet points, I will discuss other bullet points. Let me come to this diagram. This diagram is not that clear. I just copied and pasted it from somewhere, internet. Now these are the two adjacent supports, and it's only one phase of conductor is shown here. This is the steel lattice structure, lattice tower, and the towers are at same level of same height, meaning the land is plain here and the towers are having same height, and the conductor is strung between these two tower structures. Now when we string a conductor like this, what will happen? The conductor will sag. There will be a dip or sag for various reasons. The first reason is that the conductor has its own weight. Conductor has its own weight, and the weight comes from what? The conductor weight comes from what? Copper is the material. Copper is the name of the material. How do you calculate weight? That is where the hint or the answer lies. How do you calculate weight? You are given a piece of certain length of the conductor. How do you calculate the weight of that conductor? Gravity is one of the factors. Yes, that's the answer. Gravity times mass. So mg. M comes from what? G is constant. We know that G is constant, right? Gravity is constant. you remember that the density and length is going to give you the volume. Yeah, the answer is there. You're giving the right word: cross-sectional area, length, and density of material. So we get that weight of a conductor of a certain length. Now that's right. Now when we have a certain length of a conductor, in this case, in this chapter, we assume that the weight is uniformly distributed. Meaning, if I take a 100-meter length of a conductor, I would know that if I say that it weighs 1 kg per meter, it would be appropriate. It means if I take any piece of 1 meter of that 100-meter length, I will always get 1 kg. So it's uniformly distributed. It is something again related to that applied mechanics. That is where we learned that uniformly distributed load, like our beams, our bridge, all those applications, cantilever, overhanging parts, that we have our balconies at home. So it's uniformly distributed. It's not somewhere lumped more and somewhere less. No, it's not like that. So it's uniformly distributed load. So its weight is uniform. So we'll say always like this, per unit length. So 1 kg per meter. So that weight is the first one that is going to cause this sag. And if we could make this conductor such that it is strung in a straight line like the red dotted line, there will be no sag. In that case, sag is going to be 0. So because of that conductor weight, it dips, and we allow that sag actually a little bit. We allow that sag a little bit because if we strung it like a slide, the tension is going to be much more. And if we allow it like this one, the middle one, where there is a little sag, then the tension is less. If we allow the bottom one, the tension is even lesser. So if we allow more sag, the tension will be less and less. If we allow less sag, the tension will be more and more, and the conductor material might reach its ultimate tensile strength and be subjected to the breaking point from the point where it is fastened to the transmission line tower. Now, the span is the horizontal distance between two adjacent supports. Span is the horizontal distance between two adjacent supports, and the sag is the vertical distance between the lowest point of the conductor and the point of support. So the point of support is here, and the vertical distance between the lowest point of the conductor and the point of support is the sag. Now sag is the vertical distance between the point of support and the lowest point of the conductor. Now I was repeating, the reason is that I said lowest point of the conductor. Now why it is coming to the lowest point of the conductor? That is where the conductor is having a maximum distance between the point on the conductor and the point of support. So if we come to any point on the conductor here, the vertical distance is smaller. This is the maximum distance. So that is what we need to consider. What is the maximum distance between the point of support and the lowest point of the conductor? So that's why that lowest point is there. And this lowest point is going to be the middle point of the span if the towers are of same height and they are on the same plane. This lowest point of the conductor is going to be the middle point of the span if the towers are of the same height and they are on the same length. The reason is that we assume that the conductor weight is uniformly distributed. Does it make sense? So if you distribute your weight uniformly along the length of the conductor or along the span, then you will have a sag or lowest point such that it is the middle point of the span. Is that clear? Okay, that's good. So sag and span, these are the definitions. Sag is the vertical distance between the point of support and the lowest point of the conductor, and span is the horizontal distance between two adjacent supports where the transmission line conductor is found. So I can go back to the next one, which is related to permissible ground clearance. So I come back to this diagram and I say that the lowest point of the conductor is required to be considered. The reason is that this lowest on the conductor will tell us what is the clearance now available between that point and ground. Because when we put our transmission line along the corridor, transmission line corridor, sometimes they cross many things that we use in our real life. For example, crossing a railway track, crossing a bridge, crossing national highways, crossing normal streets, crossing high buildings. It can be nearer to some very populated areas like busy cities mentioned. So we need to make sure that this clearance is enough. And this enough word is going to be dependent on where that line or the clearance we are talking about. If it is nearer the highway, not much clearance is required as compared to if it is nearer to the populated areas or nearer to a city, because where there is a chance that many high buildings can be there or many people are around or other lines can be passing by that transmission line. So we need to have more clearance where there are a lot of people and high buildings are there. But if it is national highway, we know that only those trucks or carrier transport that can be, which is crossing the transmission lines are crossing the national highway. If it is crossing a railway track, we need to make sure that it's very high, because these days we use railway tracks where there is electrification. So they also have their own tower. So it must be above a certain line. If it is crossing a bridge, then it must be very high as well, because bridges are higher than the plain land nearby. So that will depend on where the transmission lines are erected. So the ground clearance is very, very important. And again, not only that, government regulations are there, how much should be the ground clearance. And when they say that how much should be the ground clearance, they actually give us a minimum ground clearance required. So we need to make sure that is observed or maintained. And then we coming to the temperature effect. The temperature effect, when you string a conductor between these two supports, the temperature, ambient temperature is going to cause some more sag or less sag. Because of temperature, the conductor might expand or contract. So the sag will change accordingly. And also the next one is the topography. Like we mentioned, if the land was not plain, then this tower needs to be higher. And if that happens, the lowest point of the conductor is not going to be the middle point of the span. That is also very common in many, many places, including South Africa. So if the land is not going to be plain, if it is high here, low there, then we put the tower here. So the curve will look like this. It won't be looking nice like this one. So in that case, the lowest point of the conductor is not going to be located at the middle point of the span. That is also very important to know. And it will come, we'll do some tutorial in that regard as well. That's the topography part. apart from that, wind forces that I mentioned will apply onto this one and cause the conductor sag to change. Again, ice deposition can change the sag because ice gets deposited on it, it will increase its own weight artificially, and then sag will be more. So those are the things that are related in this chapter. So what we learn here that there are relationships between span, sag, and tension, and cost of tower structure. Now, what is going to happen if we choose that economy all the time? We make sure that economy is maintained. So we want to maintain the economy, reduce the cost of installation of power structures, like we mentioned that yesterday. If you want to build a transmission line from Cape Town, Coburg nuclear power station to Drakensberg or to Durban, thousands of kilometers. So what we'll have to do, we'll have to put a number of power structures. As you can see, it's not a one piece of conductor, it's in between two structures. Then from this tower, there will be another tower here, and we'll put another conductor from here to there, and we use jumper to connect them. So it's pieces of conductors in between transmission tower. So when we do so, we want to reduce the cost of installation. If we want to reduce the cost of installation, the first thing that will come to our mind is to reduce the number of transmission towers by increasing the span. Is that clear? We want to reduce the cost of transmission line. The first thing that will come to our mind is that we cannot reduce the length because it's from Cape Town to Drakensberg or Cape Town to Durban. We cannot reduce that length. But what we can reduce the number of tower structures. Then the cost is going to be reduced. But is that clear? If that is clear, what happens? We want to reduce the number of tower structures, meaning what will happen? The span will be more. The span will be more. Is that clear? If we reduce the tower structure, meaning the distance between the two supports will increase if we reduce the number of tower structures. It's very simple. We do it in many different applications. So if the span will be longer than the previous case, if we reduce the number of towers, as the span is increased, the sag will increase. The span and sag, they are related. If the span is increased, the sag is increased. We can try it for a very short distance. You will see that there is no sag. So they are not subjected to that much of tension. We can keep the sag low. So to increase the span, we can reduce the number of tower structure, reduce the cost, but the sag will increase. As the sag increases, what happens? The ground clearance decreases, which becomes dangerous to people. So that is one of the things that comes there. Cost of tower structure can be reduced. We need to go for the trade-off, how much we can afford in terms of reduction of cost for the transmission line tower. Now, as we increase the span, sag will be more. Yes, this affects the ground clearance. This also affects the tension in the conductor. If we allow more sag, the tension will be less, which is good for the conductor. It will have less chance of getting snapped up from the point where they are fastened to the structure. Now this span, when we said how much we should choose as a span, is it going to be 100 meter, 200 meter, or 300 meter? Because that actually determines how many tower structures we will need. It depends on many things. First of all, the conductor size. Second is the conductor loading, mechanical loading, not electrical current. Electrical loading, when you talk about loading in electrical engineering, is generally electrical loading, meaning how many amperes. So That's why I wrote it mechanical loading. Mechanical load. They are coming from either the weight of the conductor or from wind blowing over the surface of the conductor or ice getting deposited on the surface of the conductor. And local weather conditions also affect how the span should be and the topography, meaning if the tower structures are on the same land or in an unequal level. So first one, the conductor size. Now the conductor size means the diameter of conductor or the cross-sectional area. And we know that for conductor cross-sectional area, we choose it to ensure that the conductor losses are minimum, because conductor size will determine how many amperes can flow through the conductor. Because when you want to go and buy some conductor manufacturers, they will tell you this is the conductor size that we manufacture according to our standards. They don't just manufacture, they produce or manufacture according to standard. South African standard or British standard or American standard or Indian or Chinese standard, doesn't matter, but the standard is there for sure. And according to those standards, each of those conductors they manufacture can carry a certain amount of current. So you choose it from there. When you choose it, that will determine what will be the weight of conductor that we talked about. The diameter, length, density, depending on the material that is chosen. So the conductor actually determines if the conductor is of small diameter, then it can have longer span because it won't sag much, because smaller diameter will have smaller weight or lower weight as compared to a conductor which has bigger diameter or larger cross-sectional area. So the conductor determines the span very much. If you choose smaller diameter conductor, it can have longer span. If you choose larger cross-sectional area for a conductor, it cannot have longer span because it will sag so much because of its own weight. Right, then the mechanical loading that comes from the weight of the conductor, wind blowing over the surface of the conductor, and ice deposition on the conductor. And this ice deposition, temperature, and wind flow is coming from the local weather conditions. So it varies all the time. And these also play a very important role. For example, the conductor weight, the weight of ice, the force of wind, they also determine the span. The reason is that when we have a longer span, the sag will be more, and as the sag is more, when the wind is blowing over the surface of the conductor, it will swing more and more. If it swings more and more, it can even sometimes touch the other phase. It can even touch another transmission line nearby, because when we run a transmission line corridor, sometimes we run 2-3 parallel systems, carry a large amount of power, because we don't get often transmission line corridors available for installing transmission lines. So the government gives a right of way to build those. It cannot just put there. You need clearance from the government authorities like municipalities. So they give us, okay, this is your area, 100 meter or 50 meter wide, so you can use that. So when you get the 50 meter or 100 meter or 200 meter if the area is vacant, then we use them to put more and more transmission structure. So you cannot afford to have too much of swing and causing a situation where they get damaged. So that is also important, and the topography. So when the land is plain, we can have longer span as compared to the hilly areas. In hilly areas, we cannot have longer span because one of the structure will be located at a higher level or a lower level. That is going to cause the ground clearance different, very different, from the plain land tower structure. The reason is that lowest point of the conductor is always our focus, because that is where the ground clearance is measured or maintained or need to be maintained. So when we have a very long span for unequal support, it becomes more and more dangerous. We cannot afford to have that. So that's why topography is also one of the factors that determines the span. Is that okay? Okay, fine. Thank you. So in olden days, like the table that you see here is showing typical values of transmission line voltages. The factors that I talked about here are not showing transmission line voltage. But in olden days, they were using this type of table. It's not going to be exactly the same they were using, but it was a typical type of table they were using, and they were considering the transmission line voltage relating to the span. And these, in olden days, 11 kV was transmission line voltage, but these days, transmission line voltage. Like 132 kV these days is sub-transmission voltage. It's below transmission. These days, voltage is higher than 132 kV. So you can imagine it's an old one, but it was used as a thumb rule kind of thing for the organization, for the power utility engineers. They would go and check, okay, what is the voltage level at which the transmission line is operating. Then we can go for 300 meter or 250 meter or 100 meter span. But they could not forget about all these things that we discussed here. So these things like the conductor size is related to current in the first place. That current is related to power. How many megawatts will be transmitted. So we cannot forget that as well. So this is the table that they were using. But in these days, currently, like that is put in the further study, these days they use another thing, they call it ruling span, meaning they go from one section to the other and they change the span, meaning, for example, if I find that from a particular location, I put one structure, then the adjacent one will be put after 100 meter or 150 meter, the next one can be 200. Depending on something, because there is a bridge or there is a high-rise building. So they rule the span according to some factor. But these days, they also use some tables, but this is exactly the one that you see on the screen. All these are just guidelines. We have to combine everything. And when we come to do the calculation, there are two things that we need to consider: homogeneous materials and composite. Like I mentioned earlier several times, that we can use one material to make a conductor or a number of materials to make a conductor. Like copper, so it's a homogeneous material. We assume that only copper is there, no other impurities are involved in copper or in the conductor material. So it's homogeneous conductor, and if we use a number of materials to construct or make a conductor, then it's called composite conductor. So fact calculation for homogeneous conductor is much easier than fact calculation for composite conductor, because in composite conductor there are a number of conductor materials. So first of all, their weight, their densities are different, weights are different. So that is needed to be considered. Then the second thing is the temperature effect. When the temperature will rise or decrease, then the coefficient of expansion for each and every material needed to be considered. It becomes very difficult. But these days, we don't use homogeneous materials for transmission line conductor at all. We always use composite conductors these modern days. Very, very composite. A number of materials are there. I'll talk about that in the next chapter. But in this chapter of Power Systems 1, because we are learning or starting to learn all these things, we will use only homogeneous material for making our calculations easier. So we'll consider that the material is either copper or aluminum.